Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. So happy to see you all. Welcome to everyone who's joined us online. We're gathered here to continue our perpetual katha about Krishna, because this is the process for happiness and complete perfection in life. Stane stita shutigatam tanuvan manobhir. One should go on hearing about Krishna and serving in the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the universal teacher, the universal guru, under the guidance of his representatives in parampara. Then one is assured of success. So we'll do that today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiraye. In the process of devotional service, as described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there are three basic categories. One is called sambandha, or establishing the relationship with Krishna, one's relationship. And this is the beginning stage to realize one's relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, all living entities crave some kind of relationship, but the relationships in the material world are troubled. And if they're not troubled, they're temporary. Either way, they're miserable because we're either separated from them or we wish we were separated from them. The tendency of some, then, is to kill the relationship and say we have no relationship, and try to make one impersonal. That is, try to conceive of oneself as being a non-person, and therefore give up relationships altogether. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Vita raga bhaya krodha manmaya mamupashrita bahavo jnana tapasa putamad bhavam agataha. That many people, he says, bahuta, have overcome this mistake and have thus become purified and come to the perfect relationship. And what are the three mistakes he mentions? And he says, Vita, you must give these three things up in order to become purified. So raga means over-attachment to the material body and the material world. This is called thirst for temporary things, asat trishna. Those things that won't endure, that won't last, that won't actually give me happiness, but I still have attachment for them. One should give that up. Bhaya means fear of my relationship with the Supreme, because my relationships here are either temporary or miserable. Therefore, when I hear about a Supreme Personality of Godhead and relationship with Him, then I think, let me give that up too. Krishna says you should give up that mentality. You should overcome that through knowledge to understand your real relationship. And krodha means anger, frustration. Anger that arises from frustration, which is understandable because the material energy is endlessly troublesome. It's complex, and our involvement in it is confusing and makes us confused. However, Krishna optimistically says, Bahuda Jnana Tapasa, by knowledge and by performing divine austerity, many people, Bahuvo Jnana Tapasa, many people have overcome these obstacles, Putamad Bhavamagata, and therefore they've become purified and come to the perfect stage. So, we, as eternal living entities, are graced by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in understanding the 3 stages of advancement in life. And the first is sambandha. So he says one must get this sambandha gyan. And what is that? Understanding and faith in our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Shukadev Goswami tells Parikshit Maharaj that he should develop an understanding that God is great and He's within everything, and should see Him within the universe. Look around and see how everything is a part of the universal form of the Lord, and notice how it's working in unison. This is something anyone can do, and begin to come to this conclusion that there is a supreme, and there is a supreme order behind things. Another progression is to understand that I have a relationship personally with that supreme. And what is it based on? Service. We are eternal servants of Krishna. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his song says, Jiv Krishna Das e Bishwas, Korleto Ardukonai. If you have this faith that I am a servant of Krishna, then you'll be properly situated. Then you'll be able to give up this anger, and you'll be able to give up the attachment to the material world. And you'll also give up fear of personal relationship by service, the service attitude. Someone sent me a link today on the internet, and it was a movie of a man who woke up frustrated in the morning. And he was going through every aspect of his morning feeling frustrated. Nothing worked in his house, and then when he pulled out of his driveway, a kid on a skateboard went behind him, and he thought, why does that kid always go behind me when I'm pulling out? Doesn't he have a brain in his head? And then he drove down to the coffee shop to get his morning coffee, and he walked in, and there was a huge line. Oh, first somebody stepped in front of him in the door and didn't even notice him. And he thought, why is this person so inconsiderate? Then he got in and he thought, there's a huge line. Now I have to wait. This is horrible. And then he got up to the front, and someone else stepped in front of him, and one thing after another went wrong. So he was exhibiting a lot of frustration in his life, and he was sitting there about to drink his morning coffee, and a mysterious person walked up to him and pulled out a set of glasses and said, take these, put them on. And on the glasses case it said, eyes of service. And so he put the glasses on, and then everyone he looked at had some kind of trouble in their life. It had a little computer readout on each person's chest. The person behind the counter who was selling the coffee, it said, fighting addiction, even though the person was trying to put on a cheerful face. And the person who had cut him off in line said he was having trouble at home. The kid who had driven the skateboard behind him said, I need attention, no one gives me attention. He began seeing the world everywhere within each person. He saw there was an opportunity to do some service for others, to reach out and do something. And his demeanor immediately changed. He then had a different outlook on life, that there was service to do. Jiv Krishna Das e Vishwas Korleto Ardukonai. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, if you develop a service attitude toward Krishna, then you won't have any misery, you won't have any frustration, the fear will go away. And this service Specifically, Prabhupada said, see the spiritual spark and fan it. This is our service. Our service is to find that. And if we attend to our heart and if we attend to the hearts of others, then the body and mind will follow. If we develop this service attitude to see the spiritual spark and fan it in others, then our heart will change. A service-filled heart, service-inclined ears, eyes trained to see service. And when we instill that in others, then their lives will change also. So this is the occupation of a devotee, to see the spiritual spark and fan it, to encourage others. So, what is encouragement? The word courage means heart. It comes from the French word, which is cor. What's in your heart? It is said in the handbook for the United States Marine Corps, which I read dutifully when it was recommended to me, a book called War Fighting, which described the perils of battle. War is a political situation. When nothing else works, battle takes place. We know that from Kurukshetra. It's a very inflamed and dangerous situation, war. And of course, we've read about the great heroes who have gone into battle facing one another. The great Kshatriyas. They had to be very heroic to be in those circumstances and also to understand that it was their duty to fight, and if they fought and lost, they would attain the heavenly planets and so forth. Krishna was even encouraging Arjuna in that way. In other words, they had to take heart. Otherwise, how can you fight? You can't fight the battle of life also if you don't have heart. And oftentimes we refer to our situation in life. I didn't have the heart for it. Was your heart into it? I went there, I showed up, but my heart wasn't into it. Therefore, I couldn't do anything. And the handbook War Fighting also says that the biggest armies don't always win. The armies that win are the ones in which the leader has the heart for the battle. And he instills that in the hearts of his fighters. And they say, we'll do or die. We will stand up to the challenge, and we will face it, and we will go forward no matter what. That's our duty to do, to win or die. That's the army that wins. And oftentimes others step down. We saw in the Vietnam War, and Prabhupada noted that the United States government was sending a lot of conscientious objectors and hippies after shaving their heads. They'd send them into a war, and their heart wasn't into it. We lost that war because the Viet Cong were determined it was their own homeland, and they would rather die than give it up. So they obviously would win. We had to retreat. So one must have courage within the heart. One has to have a heart for what one is doing. And it's very difficult to maintain that in life, to maintain courage constantly, because the environment we live in this world is constantly discouraging. There's discouragement that comes from other living entities. There's discouragement that apparently comes from the environment itself, from our circumstances. When nature moves against us, apparently, against our desires, I have a desire to do some things in a certain way, and it moves against me, and I can become discouraged. So, the greatest service that one can do is to find the spark, the spiritual spark in others, and fan it. Because that is the only encouraging situation, is to realize one's service to Krishna. Because that cannot be impeded. Whether nature moves against you, against your desires, whether the environment is friendly or unfriendly, one can still go on with one's service to Krishna in this world. And we see that from the examples of many devotees who have had unfavorable situations. And even in those situations, not only did their devotion shine through, but it was enhanced because of the adversity. So the great secret in life is to find this spiritual spark and then fan it in ourselves by developing service-inclined ears, service-inclined eyes, and a service-inclined heart, and then instilling that same feeling in others. This is encouragement, and is the greatest occupation, to encourage others. There comes to be a practical state of life also in which we have to manage our family life, we have to manage our finances, you have to manage the temple community. I just came from India where I attended what was called the SGGS, and I'm not sure exactly what it stands for. I think it's Sannyasis, Gurus, and GBCs. They invited senior devotees from different parts of all over the world to meet in one place to talk about one subject, and that is unity in diversity. How to create unity in diversity. And Prabhupada said that the senior devotees from all over the world should come to Mayapur every year and sit together and talk about how to achieve unity in diversity. So how do you do that? It's a great art. It relates to this mood of encouragement because Prabhupada gave some very nice directives in his letters teaching others how to manage their lives and how to manage temple communities. And I'm going to read you one letter now that he wrote to a devotee who is a GBC member, a governing body commissioner who is in charge of a certain area of the world to manage, always a challenge. And he had become frustrated because there had been some disagreements among other GBC members in the spirit of heated competition. And he had written to Prabhupada asking, how is this spiritual that these kinds of disagreements are going on amongst devotees? Would you like to hear Prabhupada's answer? It is not so much that because there may be some faults in our God brothers and God sisters, or because there may be some mismanagement or lack of cooperation, that this is due to being impersonalists. No. It is the nature of the living condition to always have some fault. Even in the spiritual world, there is some fault and envy. Sometimes the gopis will quarrel over Krishna's favor, and once Krishna was so much attracted to Radharani that by mistake he tried to milk the bull instead of the cow. And sometimes when the gopis used to put on their dresses and makeup for seeing Krishna, they would be too much hasty and smear kumkum and mascara in the wrong places, and their ornaments and dresses would appear as if small children had been trying to dress themselves and they were not very expert, like that. So there are many examples. But it is not the same as material fault or material envy. It is transcendental because it is all based on Krishna. Sometimes when one gopi would serve Krishna very nicely, the others would say, oh, she has done so nicely, now let me do better for pleasing Krishna. That is envy, but it is transcendental, without malice. So we shall not expect that anywhere there is any utopia. Rather, that is impersonalism. People should not expect that even in the Krishna consciousness society there will be utopia, because devotees are persons. Therefore, there will always be some lacking. But the difference is that they're lacking because they have given up everything to serve Krishna: money, jobs, reputation, wealth, big educations, everything. Their lackings have become transcendental because despite everything they may do, their topmost intention is to serve Krishna. One who is engaged in devotional service despite the most abominable action is to be considered saintly because he is rightly situated. The devotees of Krishna are the most exalted persons on this planet, better than kings, all of them. So we should always remember that. And like the bumblebee, always look for the nectar or the best qualities of a person. Not like the utopians who are like the flies, who always go to the open sores or find the faults in a person, and because they cannot find any utopia or because they cannot find anyone without faults, they want to become void, merge, nothing. They think that is utopia, to become void of personality. So if there is sometimes slight disagreements between devotees, it is not due to impersonalism, but it is because they are persons. And such disagreements should not be taken seriously. The devotee is always pessimistic about the material world, but he is very optimistic about the spiritual life. So in this way, you should consider that anyone engaged in Krishna's service is always the best person. I am very pleased that you're assisting your godbrothers so nicely. Yes, this is our real position, to be servants of the servants of the servants. And by your quiet and humble attitude, you shall set the example of Vaishnav so that all may learn from you. And very soon their puffed up attitude will disappear and they will come to you and seek your advice in matters. And now, before I continue, I would like to take some reflections. Anything that you heard so far that stuck in your mind that seemed useful or profound in any way? Yes, Ramananda.
There is this person who initially, at the beginning of the lecture, you said that he was having issues with people, and like one child, he was passing by a skateboard in front of him, and then when he goes for coffee, again there are issues with he saw issues with people, and afterwards he got a glass. I mean, he was given a glass, and then it was written there, service.
Yes.
So, and then you mentioned that afterwards you mentioned that one can see an opportunity to service there because all these people have got some problems or another, and so there is an opportunity for service.
Yeah, and the person's in this short film, demeanor changed as soon as he put the glasses on and he realized that others were experiencing complexity in their lives. He saw there's some opportunity to help them. In fact, at the end of the film, he's about to pull out of his car again, and the kid drives behind him with a skateboard, and he goes out and sort of reaches out to the kid and says, you're riding very nicely and so forth. That was your main point? You like those glasses?
I'm not there yet, but one day I will get those glasses.
Yeah. We should, anything else?
That's it.
Okay. That we should have those glasses on to see. This is a service-inclined ears, service-inclined eyes, and service-inclined heart. We have to find the spiritual spark in others and fan it.
I was just going to say that Ramananda Saka Prabhu already wears those glasses. He doesn't admit it.
I think he has contacts. He doesn't make it obvious, but he's always serving.
I was also thinking about...
yes.
Sorry, I was also thinking about you always say your seva will save, yeah?
Yes.
And it does,
And yes, thank you. Dheeraj and then Hansapriya.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So that story, actually, we used to have an essay in childhood, and the title was The Day When Everything Went Wrong. So I remember participating in an education exactly on the same topic.
And then changing your vision.
Yeah, it's all about perspective and your attitude towards
it is. We can't change the world around us, but we can change our perspective. And the proper perspective is to see the spiritual spark in others and then fan it. If that becomes our occupation to encourage others, then we ourselves become encouraged, because that's something that we can do. There is encouragement through giving people a higher consciousness, giving them a transcendental wisdom, and teaching them that they're not their body, and how to take advantage of the association of Krishna. Thank you. Hansapriya?
I like the point you made that everything in the material world is the troublesome. If it's not troublesome, it's a temporary. It kind of makes me evaluate what am I really chasing in this world after.
Yes. Yeah,
sorry.
please.
And also like the unity in diversity. I was talking to Giriraj Maharaj, and he mentioned, I was asking him how he can help me to understand more of understanding others. And he mentioned that he heard from Ritadwaj Maharaj that we are all in the process of taking a bath. So we are all getting clear. We are in a different stage, and it takes a long process to get clean. So we just focus on a baby. We don't throw the baby out of the bathwater.
Yeah, both for ourselves and others. And there's three ways of seeing other people. One is by their past, one is by their present, and one is by their future. Those who are less advanced judge people by what they've done in the past. They're like this. Because they did this, that's the way they are. But others who are more advanced, they see that, okay, they may have done it in the past, but here's the way they are now, and therefore I accept them. But the most advanced, like Krishna and his representatives, see people in terms of their future because of their potential, because they see the spiritual spark and then they fan it. And therefore they see that no matter what situation one is in now, by the touch of the spiritual energy, one can come to the highest position, and the Bhagavatam is full of examples of these people who were deficient in every way, but who became elevated because of the touch of the spiritual energy. Yes, there was a couple more?
One quick point. So thank you so much for reading out that wonderful letter from Srila Prabhupada. Actually, it relates to your lecture on envy that you took several months back. And I was thinking hard till this point on positive envy, and Srila Prabhupada terms it correctly as transcendental envy.
Yes.
So it's very different. Thank
That's
you.
right. Damodar?
I actually like the letter of Prabhupada, and pretty much his instructions to all of us later to cooperate brings this point, because the utopic condition of finding everything perfect doesn't exist. So that was a good instruction Prabhupada. Also, I was thinking on this was Prabhupada always wants us to engage in activities rather than sitting and wearing these glasses of service again propels ones to be, though there will be challenges in being a Kirtananandi rather than Bhajananandi, but then if people wear these glasses and set the expectation that it's not a utopic world, can encourage despite impediments in the path of devotional service.
Thank you. Nirkula and Kanka had a point. And then I see you, Shalabahu. Right.
I was also thinking the same as Damodar, that there's not, this utopia doesn't exist, and how there's so many people that try to pretend that this world is utopia, and how it is, that's actually the real impersonal philosophy, and how in the letter Srila Prabhupada gave us so many nice examples of the gopis in the spiritual world, how there's these things, but these things will exist within us too, because we're persons. And as long as we are practicing Krishna consciousness by the instruction of the spiritual master, then we will make advancement.
Thank you.
when I first came to the temple, I was pretty naive, 17 years old. I thought I was joining a spiritual community and everything would be utopia. I thought there wouldn't be any more problems. I thought everyone would get along. And I thought everybody who was already in the temple were pure devotees. And, you know, in one sense they are. But then, you know, after some time, I started seeing things that I questioned. And I remember when I first heard that Srila Prabhupada said this, that there is, you know, don't expect utopia, that's impersonal. And that really helped me in my Krishna consciousness to see that, you know, we would still have so many, you know, maybe disagreements or that everything wasn't perfect, but it was still, we were all still Vaishnavas in the process of becoming Krishna conscious.
Thank you. Shalabahu?
Hare Krishna. One of the things I was thinking, this is more like a question to finding the spark and fanning it, to finding somebody else spark. Before we do that, we should find the spark within us and fan it. Otherwise, if we look at somebody else and we cannot find ourselves as a part of this part and particle of Krishna, then to finding somebody else, is it the way it is work? Probably with realized souls around in here, maybe I'm asking the wrong question.
So ask the question.
My question is, the first step is to finding yourself and spark it as a soul, as a spark.
Yeah, the process is mentioned in the Sri Upanishad as systematic. And the word uses anupashyati. Anu means to follow. That means one must follow the opinion of the scripture and of the acharyas in the way one sees the world. I don't see it the way I'm accustomed to seeing it. At least I don't do so accurately, because my perception, my instrument to see the world, is tinged by contamination by the modes of material nature. Therefore, I see things with my own inclination. I don't have service-inclined ears, I don't have service-inclined eyes, and I don't have a service-inclined heart, because I have these instruments are tinged by the modes of material nature. Therefore, I defer to the scripture, and I defer to the guru, and I defer to the sadhus in the way they recommend that I see the world. This is called anupashyati, seeing by following. And by taking their advice, then I can properly see. And part of their advice is that one must practice the spiritual science oneself for purification. And by doing that and perceiving one's own response to the spiritual process, one can understand how it works. If you don't get results from a certain kind of medicine, then you don't recommend it to others. If you don't like the results you're getting from anything, there's no need to tell others, because it doesn't work. So one must be getting results, otherwise there'll be no impetus to share it with others. And that begins with one's own practice. However, there is a way in which, by beginning to give to others, even in a neophyte stage, one also gets realization about one's spiritual nature and sees the spark within. Those who start early and often go out to give Krishna consciousness to others, for instance, going door to door, going out to chant in public, reaching out to teach other people about Krishna consciousness, have reflected back to them the natural reactions that people have according to their state of heart. Some people become immediately inclined towards taking it up, and that encourages us, because we see, oh, this person's more enthusiastic than I am, and just see how easily the spark can be fanned. And other people may immediately be repulsed by Krishna consciousness, And this is also, don't worry, it's okay. It's all part of the program. This is also a revelation in seeing why would somebody be so averse superficially to hearing about Krishna consciousness. So both can take place. One should cultivate and see within oneself and get some results and distribute it as much as possible, and then it's augmented. We tend to get more realization when we distribute it as well. So in the matter of recognizing the individual, Prabhupada wrote another letter in which he recommended that managers create an atmosphere in which the people under his or her care are inclined to do service that is individual, spontaneous, and voluntary. Unity and diversity. It's more efficient to make unity. For instance, in corporations and organizations, sometimes there's centralization, and everyone has to work through one hub and not use as much individual initiative to grow. Prabhupada didn't encourage that so much. He, in fact, in the beginning was accused by someone of spreading himself too thin in the early days when he was starting to send out devotees individually to cities and say, you go start a center here. Real beginners, actually. Some people had only been around for 6 months. And then he would say, you go to Santa Fe, you go to San Francisco. Or they would come to him and say, we'd like to go to San Francisco. And he said, go do it. This was his mood, go start it here and there. And he noted that if one person with some impetus in their heart to practice Krishna consciousness and to invite other people in, went to a certain place and set up shop, they were succeeding. But one gentleman was observing the beginnings of the Krishna consciousness movement, and he wrote to Prabhupada and said, you're spreading yourself too thin. You should concentrate everything in one area, develop it, and then let it grow from there. And Prabhupada disagreed. He said, actually, these devotees who are going off and starting on their own, they're learning from the very beginning how to deal with all kinds of adversity, and he wanted them to struggle so that they would learn how to do things on their own and become independently thoughtful and be able to develop. And as the movement expanded, he also encouraged that the temples stay, for the most part, individual units and learn how to grow on their own, even economically, financially, to come stand on their own 2 feet. And that would make them strong and so forth. There's always a tendency to centralize, and one of his leaders, who's a very good manager, had this scheme to centralize all the finances for all of North America, and let's make it more efficient. It's a way to think. And Prabhupada wrote back to him and said, don't do this. Don't kill the individual spirit. I don't want that it's centralized like that. And in that letter, he wrote about creating an atmosphere that fosters service as individual, spontaneous, and voluntary. However, there is a need for some centralization here and there. Prabhupada started a GBC, which he said is the ultimate managerial authority of ISKCON. And having seen how the GBC works, anytime somebody gets into management, the first thing that one might think of is like how to make things more efficient. And how do you make things more efficient? You centralize. And so there is this dynamic equalization that goes on constantly. On one side, there's organization, on the other side, there's chaos. And both of them are natural. One only has to go to India to see how that works. I see some of the time they have these films of an intersection, and I mean anywhere in the world actually, how living entities, even the organization of the body holds together through homeostasis, and there's all these individual cells that have their own life. And each one of those cells has its own impetus to live in a certain way, but it's somehow or other with the billions of other cells and numerous other organs in the body which are run on precise hormonal processes, somehow or other cooperate together and they go on. And there's some individual impetus, but they all have to work together as one body. So there's a model that Rupanuga Prabhu, who's a management professor in Irvine, California, taught me early on when I started going to visit him. And if you would draw an axis with an X and a Y axis, please. Bali Madarn is expert at that. A nice big cross. In the middle, down, all the way down. No. Just a big plus sign, yeah. The other one needs to be a little darker because the other one will feel envious. Just use the green, make it dark going down. So he taught me that in any organization, there's these two sides. So there's, for the top one, you can write VA at the very top. It stands for vertical alignment. And then the bottom one over here, you can put HA, horizontal alignment. And thank you very much, Bali Madarn Prabhu. This represents the eternal struggle between centralization and the individual impetus to grow and to express oneself and so forth, and to excel. So vertical alignment depends on having a very clear overarching goal for one's organization. And if we're talking about our lives, we talk about how it's important to have a clear mission. What are you doing in your life? What is your core purpose for your existence? Do you have that clearly in mind? If someone grabs you on the way out to the parking lot, they say, "What's your core purpose in life?" Is it ready to roll off your tongue? Yes? No? Maybe. So in organizations also, there has to be a core purpose, overarching purpose. And this is the vertical alignment. That means that why does it exist? Why are we here? Some corporations exist to make money. So whatever feeds the bottom line, so to speak, is good because that's why they exist, to make money for the stockholders and so forth. And then the horizontal alignment means that within any organization, there are many different entities. How many entities do we have here at ISV? Could you name a few? As far as organizations within the organization. Book distribution. A school. The PLA. Yes? Pujari department. Festal department, cooking department. Bhakti Shastri. Cleaning. Broadcast. Now, has anybody who's part of ISV and has been part of the operations here ever noticed a conflict between one department and the other? I'll take that as a yes. You care to say what it was? Somebody cooked in the kitchen and then forgot to clean up, maybe? That could have happened. Or what else? Parked the car in the middle of the parking lot and forgot about others. Anything else? Kids disturbing the lecture. Okay, so there's moving parts and there are different departments going on all at the same time, just like in our body, there are different organs. So this is our horizontal alignment. And Rupanuga Prabhu gave me the example in a small company. There might be a supermarket, a small supermarket. And one of the departments is the buying department. So they're looking through to find bargains, and they find that there's some sugar on sale. And they decide that because the sugar is now on sale, it's 50% off. We're going to buy about 5 times as much as we usually buy to take advantage of this savings. So they buy all this sugar and it gets shipped. And it lands in the warehouse at the store. And then the warehouse organizer, who's a different department, realizes there's no place to put the sugar. So he decides to rent an extra storage locker and put it in the parking lot. So he takes the extra sugar, which they just saved money on, pays for a storage locker and puts the sugar in the storage locker. And then comes along the parking lot manager and said, this is taking up space and we don't have actually a permit to have this here. And so he unilaterally decides that I'm going to sell off the sugar at a reduced price, just get rid of it because we're spending money on this extra parking space, and that'll solve the problem. So he goes and he sells the sugar at a cut rate below 50%. So they lose money on the storage and then the sugar. And because there was no horizontal alignment, nobody was talking to the other departments to find out what was the most efficient. Therefore, it went in a loop and they lost money on everything. So there's a way in which to run an organization, there must be horizontal alignment in which everyone has some communication based on the overarching goal of the organization and cooperation so that everyone knows what's most efficient and what everyone else is doing, so there's not loss. So there's this dynamic that's always going on between the vertical and the horizontal alignment. And these are constantly coming into harmony, hopefully. That's the goal, to bring them into harmony. So this relates to our organization, the way we cooperate amongst ourselves based on the highest goal of our organization, a clear understanding of why we're doing what we're doing. And what is that overarching goal for our organization, for instance, here at ISV? Who can say? We serve all living beings by widely spreading the holy names. And coming back to that over and over again is very important. So there's 3 aspects to developing this kind of cooperation. And these are practices that anyone can implement in their life in order to develop this kind of harmony in their own personal lives and the organizations they live in or work for, and also in their family life and so forth. And the first one is to always go back to see the overarching goal. Revisit what the goal is, why we're doing what we're doing. Because in the heat of the day and performing many duties, sometimes it's easy for me to forget why I'm doing things and to get caught up in the immediate point of contact. So in our lives overall, we're on a journey back home, back to Godhead. And it's important to go back and remember that. Why are we doing the things we're doing? We're on a short journey here. We're just passing through. And our ultimate goal is to go back home, back to Godhead. Second thing, besides seeing the overarching goal, is don't take credit for what you do. Don't claim credit for what you do. For we're instruments in whatever we do, whatever service that we perform. We're being given that opportunity by Krishna. We're being given the facilities by Krishna. And if I develop an entitlement mentality that this is me doing this, and I hold on to the credit, then it limits my ability to serve. And it also makes me more of a separatist. And takes away the horizontal alignment. So what's the first one? Keep the goal in mind. Always revisit your goal and see, why am I doing what I'm doing? What is the ultimate goal? What's the ultimate goal of the organization? What's the ultimate goal of my family? What's the ultimate goal of my life? And if I keep coming back to that ultimate goal, it helps to align all the individual things I'm doing in life. And what is the second point? Don't claim credit. One of the American presidents said that it's amazing how much you can get done if you don't have to claim the credit. And this is something that one can judge oneself on, how much advancement one is making, by seeing how much do I have to claim the credit for what I did. You can see it within yourself. Do I have to have my stamp on it? When someone else comes in with an idea and I already thought of it, do I have to say, no, but I already thought of that. That was my idea. You can't have that. The fact is there are no new ideas. They're all coming from Krishna, and they've all been done before. Just be an instrument. Don't try to claim the credit, because if you do, then you limit your ability to serve. And when you limit your ability to serve, then you limit your very purpose in life, which is to have service-inclined eyes, service-inclined ears, and a service-inclined heart. The upside is those who don't claim any credit, who simply divert all of their energy towards serving Krishna sincerely, are supported personally by Krishna. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Ananyas chintayanto mam, ye jana parupasate, tesham nityabdi yuktanam yogakshemam bahamyaham. To those who simply serve me and think of me all the time, they don't have any other business. They're not trying to do business for themselves. Those people I personally support. So if you become inclined towards serving Krishna and you don't have the inclination to be self-serving by claiming the result, then Krishna will personally support your effort. Yogakshemam bahamyaham. And the number 3 point is that we should always learn to curb envy by learning the art of appreciation. Envy means the inability to tolerate the eminence of another. And appreciation is the opposite. It means that I turn my heart towards others and see what's good in them. And Prabhupada points out that bees seek honey, whereas the flies seek the sores. And if in the beginning I don't have this inclination, I should train myself to have it. It's not that I can't train myself to appreciate others, because if one simply diverts one's original tendency towards appreciating, for instance, a Brahmin once came to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and said, I'm an offender. I've spoken ill against all of your devotees. What should I do? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, this kind of criticism against devotees is like drinking poison. But he said the antidote is to praise the devotees. So he said, you can overcome this by, instead of criticizing others with your mouth, with your tongue, turn it around and praise them. You can say something meritorious about them. So the urge to speak will still be there, but like your mother told you, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say it at all. But better, find something meritorious to say. And it's amazing how, if you spend time with somebody who's developed this art, whether it's completely heartfelt or not, if they've developed the skill of learning how to divert the envy which comes out from the tongue and say something meritorious about people, even when the tendency might still be there to criticize them, you'll be affected by their association. I know I associated recently with somebody who had developed this skill very deeply, to not criticize others. So whenever we were having a conversation, it was very obvious that he would not divert his tongue in that way. He would only speak, he would find the things that were meritorious about the person, even though it was obvious when the person's name came up that they were open for, there was open season, you know, one could take an easy shot. But he wouldn't do it. So how did that make me feel? I walked away and thought, well, I'm such a fault finder. I noticed it more because I could see that he didn't have that tendency at all. And it spreads, and it's something that one can develop. So the third quality to learn, or the skill to learn, is to be non-critical of others. Do not use the tongue to unnecessarily criticize others. Caveat to that is, unless it's your assigned duty to find fault, in which case you should find fault and do it judiciously, because there's a way in which every living entity is sensitive. Even cats and dogs don't like to be criticized too much. Every living entity is sensitive, and the way we administer criticism is a testament to our own advancement in Krishna consciousness. And people respond well when we give them criticism that they can digest. So be careful. First of all, don't criticize unnecessarily, because it won't do you any good. It'll actually do you harm. So better to divert that into some kind of an appreciation. And if it's your assigned duty to criticize others, then do it judiciously so that people can digest it and actually advance from your criticism. Now we'll take a few more reflections, anything that you heard so far that's stuck in your mind. Mukaravind and then Priya.
Thank you very much
Yes.
for the wonderful practical point, especially the third point, what you told, like how to curb the envy. And I had a realization when we went to Dham, and I had very nice god brother. And then we went to one shop, and he told me before about the shopkeeper that he's charging something more. But I saw that when he taken when all the dealings are done, he appreciated that. Thank you for being in Dham and having this shop set here, so that devotees can come and take part. So that rub on me, my heart, that how we should develop that consciousness of appreciating. That was really that's like not only just Dham, and definitely we should be very careful in Dham with dealing with everyone, because everyone is so special there. But also I carried away that with me when I came here.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, on the third point on envy, immediately Prahlad Maharaj's prayer came to my mind, where when I feel sometimes that, I'm feeling the envy from somebody else, because in envy, the person who's envious suffers, and the person who's envied against also suffers. So then I always think of Prahlad Maharaj's prayer that, oh Lord, please let all the envious be pacified so the devotees can live peacefully. I found that very profound in just practical way in my life. And then also I was reading Radhanath Maharaj's these sentences, I think in Facebook, that just slipped my mind. But on envy, that he was saying that it just slipped my mind. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. We can come back. Thank you.
I like the point that you said all the ideas are Krishna's ideas. It's not mine and yours. You know, usually we have the competition mine, but that's very nice to hear.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. Thank you.
So Prabhuji, about the envy and non-critical, it's so because the first person who benefits is us. But still, when we see the faults in someone whom we love or someone whom we care for, maybe not part of the family, but still, it really takes a toll on us to tolerate and tremendous amount of thinking to find the right amount, a right time to tell the things in the right way. So where do we receive the strength from? Because we don't see a lot of examples around all the time.
Life in general takes a toll. And that's part of the lesson of living, is to find out, you know, it may seem like a toll because it's moving against my desires at the time. I have a set idea of what my life is, who I am. I have an assumed identity in this life. I've taken on this false identity. And it's surrounded by my senses. It's custom made because of my previous desires. And this has been going on and on and on and on and on. And now I come out into this world with a mindset because of my previous desires and now my karma. And now, even as I'm growing up, I develop a certain set of expectations. It's heaven calling to us. And when the world moves against that, I feel, if you can't identify, just put it in a bucket of water, it'll stop. We'll keep a bucket by the door. Okay, we can. When the world moves against my desires, then I feel calamity. I feel the toll. That is the toll. It's going against my false ego of what I think the world is, the way I'm supposed to be treated, the way everything's supposed to happen. I mean, it's not that there aren't codes in this world, the way we're supposed to live and the way we're supposed to treat others. But obviously, those aren't observed. And obviously, the reason we have those codes is because people don't follow them. Therefore, there's rules to keep people in check. But the world will move against our desires. And the devotee is constantly learning from that. And even in the most severe circumstances, if you go on, as you go on chanting Hare Krishna, which means you're praying to Krishna that let me align myself with your desires, let me develop service-inclined ears, eyes, and heart towards you, then it's opening a hole, actually. It's actually burning away that sense of false ego. And we see in cases in the Bhagavatam in which devotees became disgusted with their lives. Maharaj Anga was a pure devotee, and he had a son that was so bad that he had to just walk away from everything in life. And if you can imagine such a thing. So bad, he said, I'm leaving my kingdom. I'm leaving my family. And he took it as a blessing. Vidura also, he was in an exalted family. But there was a bad seed in the family, Duryodhana, who berated him so badly and actually threatened his life right in his own home. And said such nasty words against him that could never be forgiven practically. He took that as an opportunity. I'm leaving now. So, and it doesn't mean that one has to up and leave, but it does mean that one has to realign one's heart. And how will that happen if it's not forced upon me? It won't. Because I'm set in my ways because of the way I've been moving in this world from one body to the next with my own set of expectations, the way I want things to be, because I want to be in the center. But when one takes the devotional service and the world moves against one's desires, that's Krishna's mercy. And that's what the Bhagavatam says. And the Bhagavatam also says that those who can take it in that way as a kind of medicine, that this is purifying me, and then they start reaching for the ultimate goal, and they say, I want out of the whole deal, I want only Krishna, I don't want to be in the center anymore. they can actually be propelled in a higher way. So we have to take this kind of adversity and suffering as a way in which we're getting purified. And those who take it in that way will very quickly advance in devotional service. Tate anukampam susamikshimano, bunjana evatma kritam vibhakam. This is the Hridvagvapur vir vidadam namaste jiveta yo mukti pade sadaya bhak. Those who think like that inherit the kingdom of God. Is that okay? Is that good enough for you? Can you tolerate it? I mean, you know, that's the way it is. And if we can take it like that, we become the inheritors of the kingdom of God. And it's not easy, so we need a lot of help. We need to constantly hear, we need association with advanced devotees. And that's why I said in the very beginning, we have to have courage and we have to give courage, because this world is discouraging. The word discouraged means the heart. What is my state of heart? I become discouraged so easily here. We should all encourage each other and we should encourage ourselves, because we need that courage to move forward, even one step in this world, because it's so hard. It is a hard world. And Krishna says it from the very beginning, but nobody believes him. Dukkalaima shashvatam. Just like Chitraketu Maharaj. He was so blind to his real self-interest in life. In fact, it's really a lesson, Chitraketu, in the 6th canto of Bhagavatam, that he had everything. He had the most wealth you can imagine because he had millions of wives. So I can't imagine how much wealth he had. And he was a king. And his wives were beautiful, his kingdom was beautiful, his people were beautiful. He had a strong body and a beautiful body, but he wasn't happy because there was something he wanted. He wanted a son, and he couldn't be happy without it. And Sage Angira came and said, "You don't look happy. What's the matter?" He said, well, I hate to say it, but I got to have a son, otherwise I can't be happy. And Angira knew, you won't be happy with a son either. But he said, I will grant you a wish, because he wanted to bestow some benedictions upon him. And he performed a yajna. He gave him some sweet rice, which he gave to his wife, Kritaduti, his first wife. She became pregnant. Now he was happy. But when Angira left, he said, this is going to be mixed. It's the problem with the material world. It's mixed. Mixed happiness. It's going to be cause of your happiness and lamentation. He thought, I can handle it. And that's the problem. I keep thinking. Krishna says, Dukkalayama shashvatam. It's a place of misery and it's temporary. And that's all right. It's not all right. So now they had the son. The wives who were envious of the head wife poisoned the son. And imagine the grief. And I shudder every time I read that story, because when I hear of the misery that Chitraketu, his wife, and the whole kingdom went through when they got the son and then the son died, they fainted out of misery. That's the material world. That is the material world. You can faint. You can actually pass out because you can't handle the input that's coming from the external energy because it's so severe. You faint. Because the world moves against your desires. And if you're not aligned towards service, if you're not aligned toward tenu kampam susamikshimano, and you think, no, I have to be the way I am, then you'll have to faint because you can't stay conscious and still appreciate what's coming to you. So after that, in that moment of complete grief, Angira came back with Narada, and they spoke some wisdom. And they actually had the baby come back into the body and speak to the parent. They said, why are you leaving now? Angira, Narada said. And the baby said, no offense, but I don't know these people. Everyone thinks it's my little baby. It's a living entity passing through. And he was able to take advantage of that, and we can too. We're in the process of taking advantage of that, to come to this point of understanding my existential position of being a servant of Krishna, rather than I'm the center of the universe and everything has to work around me. So in the case of diversity, I really like a story that Tamal Krishna Maharaj wrote in his Vyasa Puja offering in 2001. It always stuck with me. And it was about the cracked pot. And this goes to appreciation of others. And that this is a story many of you might have heard. It's from India. And there's a man who was serving his master every day by carrying 2 pots of water on a long stick. And he would go down to the river and fill them up. And then he'd walk up the hill each day carrying these 2 pots on either side. And he would deliver the water to his master. Well, every day when he got to his master, one of the pots was full and the other was half full. And the reason was it had a crack in it. So these cracked pots were personified. And the one that was full every day was very proud, thinking, I'm doing such nice service. You're taking Shalabahu? All right. It's a big loss to us, though, you know. You owe us now, Gita Priya. And the other pot felt embarrassed that every day I'm only bringing half, because the water would drip out all the way up the hill. So one day, in complete shame, the cracked pot admitted to the water carrier that I feel really bad about my life, that I'm a cracked pot, and I only carry half the water of the other pot. I'm not doing very good service. I'm useless. And then the water carrier said, I want you to notice, as we walk up the hill, what your side of the hill looks like, or what it looks like in general. And the cracked pot saw there was flowers all the way up the pathway. But he was still depressed. He said, so there's flowers on the path. He said, look on the other side. And there were no flowers on the other side. He said, because you've been leaking water all the way, I took the liberty to plant seeds. And now because you're leaking water, the seeds have grown, and every day I'm taking those flowers and I'm offering at the table of my master. So you've been doing more service. And so this is a way in which I think of the verse in the Brahma Samhita, in which it is described that in the spiritual world, the living entities are all enjoyable and tasty. You know that translation? From Shriya Kanta Kanta Padama. And I think of all my days in the ISKCON movement, from the time I walked to the front door of the temple in San Francisco on Valencia Street. And I got there, and there was a character outside leaning against the door. His name was Janakanath. He was always leaning on something. In fact, when I first got to the temple room and I saw him kind of leaning on something, I said, these guys aren't yogis. Because how can you lean while somebody's giving a talk? You have to sit up like this. And he was a leaner, and he was leaning against the front porch, and he was a real character. And I asked him, I'm here to meet His Divine Grace, Prabhupada, because I thought he'd be there. What did I know? He said, he's not here. He's in India. And he said, and he gave me some other advice. He said, but you can associate with him through his books, which I had already experienced. So I thought, yeah, this is a wise person, even if he's a leaner. And when I entered into that environment, then I found more and more characters. So many characters in there. They put me on duty mopping the floors. They used to use pine salt. Everything smelled like pine salt. It was so clean in that temple. Every day mopping all the... So first day I got there, I said, here, mop these floors. And there was another devotee, Mathura Mohan, and he was a tyrant. So somebody put me with Mathura Mohan. He said, go over here, put that there. I was like brand new, my first day. And he said, don't do it like that. Stop doing that. Put that there. And somebody came in and go, what are you doing? Leave him alone. You know, he just got here. You're going to scare him away. This is Mathura Mohan. And one after another, characters. And after so many years in ISKCON, I thought, I should make a coffee table book called The Great Characters of ISKCON. I can think of so many that, you know, and that's what really TV shows, that's what makes them popular is characters. They have all these characters. It's not just everyone looks the same, all beautiful and everything like that. They have one fat guy, one skinny guy, one guy who's the loser. Everyone wants all these characters. And that's what makes up the world. That's the diversity. And we have to learn to appreciate what's in each one of them and how they're actually contributing to the overall unity by their unique contribution, appreciating every one of them. I really like how Prabhupada said they're better than kings, each one of them. And yesterday I was talking about altruism, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, even the neophyte devotee, who's the Kanishta, who all he can do is offer a lamp to Krishna, he's better than all the altruists in the world put together, who are trying to do something only to cater to the material body and mind. So having this appreciation for the great characters, not minding the diversity, actually embracing it, appreciating and seeing how it adds to the taste of the spiritual world, which is also another topic, how all the characters in the spiritual world have their own unique relationship with Krishna. Every living entity does. And some of them are funny, some of them are serious, but they all have taste and flavor. So the main point is that we have to develop service-inclined eyes, ears, and a heart. And our main service is to see the spiritual spark and to fan it. Take the great occupation of encouraging others. Take that as your main goal in life. See how you can encourage others. And as we do that, and we realize that the main encouragement comes from fanning the spark, the spiritual spark within the heart, then we'll be pleasing Krishna, we'll be aligned properly, and there'll be no lack of service for anyone. And you had a couple of points from our devotees on the internet.
From the last question break that you had, this is Bhakta Raphael, and he
Bhakta
says,
Raphael, Hare Krishna.
He says, "Welcome home.
Thank you.
The time to see the spark and the opportunity to fan it is in every second of our life. People are looking and asking questions, and we have the blessings of having the answer, and that is Lord Krishna." Hari Bol.
Yeah, it's a nice point. When you have that occupation, then at every second of life and in every nook and corner of the universe, there's opportunity for that kind of service, to learn to fan the spark. Nice realization from Raphael.
Then there's Charu Mataji, and she says, even though I couldn't make it due to cold, your class has great vibrations. Thank you for that.
Jai, I was just wondering where she was. Nice to hear from you.
And then the last one is from Rupa Manjari Devidasi Mataji from Hawaii. And she says that Srila Prabhupada's point that the so-called faults of devotees in the context of doing service are not faults like those found in the material sphere. So profound.
Nice. Thank you, Rupa Manjari. Nice to hear from you from Hawaii. What's that? Explain what Rupa Manjari said. She was referring to the letter, if I understood her correctly, in which Prabhupada was saying that when there's so-called faults in the spiritual world, they're not actual faults, but they're varieties. For instance, on one morning walk, somebody approached Prabhupada and said, "Why are there so many differences in the sampradayas?" And Prabhupada said, "This is not difference, it is variety." You know, the variety is always there, and there's also a way in which when there are apparent anomalies in one's service to Krishna, actually those are taken as transcendental. For instance, when Krishna came to the house of Vidura, Vidura's wife was so excited about serving out serving prasadam that she began peeling the bananas, and instead of giving the bananas, she was handing over the peel. Am I correct? It was a Vidura? Yeah. So, and Krishna appreciated it. Although it would appear from the point of view of a smarta to say, that is completely incorrect. You have done the wrong thing. But Krishna was saying, she's offering with more love. He appreciated the peels more than he appreciated the bananas. And certainly he wouldn't even go to the house of Duryodhana to accept a royal feast that he had prepared because there was no bhakti in it. So when one has some bhakti, for instance, Prahlad Maharaj thinks about Gajendra, he was an elephant. Prahlad was thinking of his own imperfections, that the demigods with perfect Sanskrit had prayed to Lord Nrsingadev to try to appease him, but he wasn't appeased. And then they pushed Prahlad forward and said, you try. He came for you. And then Prahlad thought, I don't have any qualification. I'm just a child. And not only that, I don't know Sanskrit. And not only that, I come from a demoniac family. But then he remembered Gajendra. And he thought, well, Gajendra was just an elephant. And Prabhupada said, he may have been big fatty animal. But he had bhakti. And then Prabhupada goes on, Hanuman, monkey. And then there's Jatayu, he's a bird, he's a vulture. As someone said, vultures can't come in here, they can't serve. And we're in Jagannath Puri, and there's a way in which Haridas Thakur, who's the Namacharya, he comes from supposedly a low-born family. He couldn't even go in the Jagannath temple, he wasn't allowed in. But he was, at the same time, considered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu the highest devotee. He didn't have to go in because Mahaprabhu would come to see him every day. So there are these apparent contradictions, there's apparent difficulties or shortcomings, but because they're transcendental, they're not considered, and they're simply variety. They increase the spiritual tension even, and make it even more tasty. That's it. So, every day, it is absolutely necessary to chant Hare Krishna with full attention. At least for 1 second a day. At least for 1 second with full attention. Because it is possible, according to the Shastra, to chant Hare Krishna for millions of years, a lot, and not give any attention. And in which case, one can go on chanting for many, many, many millions of years and not get the result. And the Bhagavatam says, better a moment of full consciousness in this life than an entire lifetime wasted in appeasing the false ego with inattention to one's service to God. So at least for 1 second every day, everyone needs to chant Hare Krishna. That means to utter the Lord's name with full comprehension that He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that He's fully present in His name. The best way to do that is to take some time, separate time, away from other activities, not multitasking. There's some studies that say it's impossible to multitask anyway. Nobody can do so efficiently. To chant Hare Krishna with full attention. Some of the ways to do that are that one can turn off anything with an on-off switch. That in and of itself is a huge statement, especially nowadays, because there are so many things blinking at us and that could go off at any second and will, that if you take the time to go shut them all off, then you're making a statement that this is time specially for the holy name. That's one thing. Another thing is to find a sacred space. That is some space where you know you won't be interrupted, and then you can give your full heart and attention to the holy name of Krishna. Another is to try sitting quietly without moving, at least for some time when you chant the holy name. And another is to sit up straight. I saw a picture the other day of a person with a bead bag in hand and a laptop on his other knee, and he was kind of slouching over, and I felt, oh, that's so disheartening to see that, because it reminds me of myself not paying attention to the holy name. And there's nothing more almost vulgar than having the opportunity to commune with Krishna through his holy name and then to misuse it and not take advantage of it. Yes? Is that an offense too? Yes, it's an offense. So one shouldn't watch TV, period. And also one shouldn't use one's laptop or do any other thing when one's chanting. Just chant. And so sitting up straight. And the other thing is pronunciation. Should learn to pronounce the name of Krishna. There are 16 words and 32 syllables. How many words? 16. And how many syllables? 32. Okay, so if you hit all of those, what were you saying, Bali?
Even some people chant with reading Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. That is also not good.
Yeah, well, not when you're chanting your rounds anyway. Although I heard the other day that the chanting can go on constantly in your mind, or at other times. But when you're chanting your japa, you should definitely not do other things, even reading the Bhagavad Gita. So pronunciation, make sure that you're pronouncing all the syllables, and then prayerfully say the name of Krishna. And the best way to describe deep prayer, my favorite description is Prabhupada saying that it should be like the genuine cry of a child for its mother. And if you can remember when you felt that helpless, and then apply that to your chanting, even for 1 second a day, then you will make an immense advancement in devotional service. Now, it's important to count how many rounds you do, because if you are chanting offensively, and it's guaranteed that you will be in the beginning, because our attention goes here, there, and everywhere. If you go on chanting, despite the fact that you're making offenses, the Shastra says, Namaparada yuktanam naman yeva harantyagam avishrani pariktani tanyevarta karani cha. You will eventually come to the end of all your offenses if you don't stop chanting. Continue to chant. Even if you're an aparadi, if you continue to chant non-stop, means that you will come to the end of your aparads. So you also have to try. So you have to count if you're serious. Anything you're serious about, you have to count. If you're an accountant, you have to count. And if your client comes to you and says, how are we doing? Say, I don't know, I'm not really counting. You'll get a new accountant, right? And if somebody says, I'm your disciple, but then they say, I'm not really counting my rounds, you'll go get another disciple. Because that's not discipline. Real discipline means to follow this basic tenet of chanting at least 16 rounds. In our line, Srila Prabhupada has given us this very safe and foundational point of chanting 16 rounds a day. That means to be a disciple. And if you count it every day, and you go on doing it throughout the different phases of your life, you'll make advancement in devotional service. And you'll also come to the end of offensive chanting. So what are the 3 things? Actually, there's 4, but can you just name them before we chant? Turn off everything with an on-off switch. Turn it off. Sit up straight. Find a sacred space. A deep prayer. And pronunciation. And count it. You should count every day. If you're not counting every day and you're not marking how many you're doing, then you're not in the game. You're not serious. You have to count. Okay, here's a way to count. If you hold up your right hand, there are different segments on your hand. Lord Chaitanya chanted on beads, and he also chanted on his hands. He used to sit at Imlital in Vrindavan, and he would sit under the imli tall tree, and he would chant all morning long until the afternoon, just chanting Hare Krishna. So here's how to count on your hand. You use your thumb as a placeholder, and the number 1 slot is in the middle section of your ring finger, number 1. Move down 1 segment to number 2. Move over to the bottom segment of your little finger for number 3. Middle segment of your little finger for number 4. Top segment of your little finger for 5. Top segment of your ring finger for 6. Top segment of your middle finger for 7. Index finger 8. 10. Now, on your other hand, you keep each segment of 10, so you can go around. And we're going to do 30. So we're going to do three segments of 10, counting together on our fingers. And when you learn to do this on your fingers, you'll notice it becomes a natural habit, unless you already have your beads around your neck all the time and you're ready to chant. When you're waiting in line, when you're doing anything, pull out your hand. It's not hard to pull out your hand. You just go like this, and then you can pull out your thumb and you can start chanting, and you'll notice that it turns into a habit. Are you ready? Yes. We'll chant the Panchatattva Mahamantra. Please repeat after me. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya. Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita, Gadadhara, Shivasari, Gaura Bhaktavinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, hey, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman.